a knitted blanket in the Tumbling Blocks pattern. Hi, I'm Kristen and welcome back to my channel, Studio Knit. This is an easy knit and purl blanket pattern. I created a lapgan size, and my pattern has different sizes that you can choose from, and it also helps you figure out exactly how much yarn you will need. Let's take a look at the beautiful texture of the tumbling blocks. This texture creates an illusion of interlocking parallelogram blocks. Now, these are created in Garter, Stockinette, and moss seed stitch, and it is a 20-row repeat knit stitch pattern. Again, it is just a simple combination of knits and purls, and this pattern is reversible, so it looks great on both sides, and we have a garter stitch border on this blanket. So let's take a closer look at these blocks. This is the moss seed stitch on the top, and then the smooth stockinette and the garter stitch on the other side of the block, and together those three pieces create blocks that tumble down as they are interlocking, connected to each other. It's just a really fun, beautiful pattern. If you are excited to knit up this blanket, please hit like and subscribe. It really helps me out. Feel free to use any bulky weight number 5 yarn. What I'm using is by Cascade. I will have links if you want to use the exact same yarn as me, but there's no need to do that. And this is a superwash merino wool. I just love this. Oh, and if you do purchase this yarn, I just want to point out that you will need to wind it into a ball. I do have a video on how to do that. For the knitting needles, we are using circular knitting needles, but we're using them flat, and they're great because they're nice and long, so we can knit this blanket all in one piece. We won't have to piece it together at the end. When we're done knitting, we are totally done with the blanket. So these are size 10 US, and I'm using 36 inches in length. You also are going to want to have scissors and a tapestry needle. A gauge swatch is totally optional. It is 15 stitches by 21 rows in the Tumbling Blocks pattern. Since this is a blanket, exactly getting your gauge perfect isn't necessary, so that's why it's optional. So to begin, you are going to cast on just the long tail cast on method, and you'll be casting on as many stitches as the pattern requires for the blanket length and type that you have chosen. Again, I'm doing a lapgan, so I am casting on 112 stitches all the way around my circular needle. Then it is time for row 1, and I just want to point out that you will begin with the empty needle in your right hand. I like to scooch the stitches down just to make sure I don't accidentally join in the round, because we are knitting this flat even though we're using this circular needle. And for this pattern, we are knitting 8 rows just in the knit stitch, and so that is the garter stitch. That is most likely the very first knit stitch pattern that you ever learned, because it is the easiest, and it's great for the edges of blankets to help it keep nice and flat for our more intricate tumbling blocks pattern in the middle. And this is optional, but at the end, instead of knitting that last stitch, I'm choosing with my yarn in the back simply to slip that last stitch purlwise. I think the edge just looks a little bit neater and cleaner when I do that for this blanket. And then you just begin the tumbling blocks pattern. So you start with 6 stitches of knitting, because we also have that garter stitch pattern on our sides, and then just start in on the tumbling blocks pattern. I am not going to go row by row. It is just knits and purls, and you'll be fine on your own following that written pattern. So as you continue to knit, your pattern emerges, and once you have gotten to the end and it is the length that you desire, then you just do the garter stitch in another 8 rows to finish up your blanket. To help keep track of my rows, I'm using a little row counter. It has really helped me in knitting this lap gan. I have a video that explains exactly how these work if you are curious, and links on where you can purchase your own. And then it's time to bind off, just a nice simple bind off as we normally do. And you'll see it has a nice pretty little edge there. And then when you get all the way to the end, of course, you are going to take your tapestry needle and weave that yarn end all the way through. And then any yarn ends that you have, of course, you will need to weave in your ends, but then you are done. Your beautiful knitted blanket is ready to use, ready to gift. This pattern texture comes from my Knit Stitch pattern book, and I have instructions for flat and in the round. I also created a special printable pattern for you. It is available over on my website, and that also really helps with figuring out exactly what size of blanket you'd like to knit and how much yarn you need. So I hope you are inspired to knit up a Tumbling Blocks blanket of your own. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you here next time. Bye!